Yes, you are welcome. So today we are going to be talking about organization and delivery of learning experience. In our last class, we talked about instructional delivery. However, this instructional delivery is just trying to let us understand how we can establish a connection between our behavioral objective. But more importantly, while I expect more other people to join, I have just two people on the call. Today, we are now going to be looking at specifically how do you organize learning experience and how do you deliver experience to ensure that there's an alignment between the content, the approach, the objective, as well as the assessment. You can have a meaningful engagement and you have to lead, or it will lead you to what we call results oriented teaching, and this will also improve your instructional efficiency. So what is organization of learning content all about? Learning experience refers to planned interaction between learners and instructional content, materials, activities, teacher, designed to achieve stated objectives or learning objectives and outcomes. So this learning experience, just like it has been said, planned interactions. So a teacher that is going to the class will have what we call a lesson plan. So that means these learning experiences must have been a planned interaction between the learners and the instructional content, between the learners and the instructional material, between the learners and instructional activity, as well as between the learners and the teacher. So that means the teacher alone is not the only thing the learner is interacting with. The learner is interacting with both the teacher as well as the instructional content, both the teacher as well as the instructional material, both the teacher as well as the instructional activity. That implies that when a teacher is going to teach, the teacher factor, which is the human factor, we also have other factors which are the non-human factors, which are the instructional content, materials and activities. All this must align to create a learning experience for the learner. When you now create this learning experience, it will promote active learner participation. It will encourage them to be critical thinkers, problem solvers. They will be able to acquire the necessary knowledge, the skills, as well as the right attitude. When you now want to do this learning inter experience, you want to plan this learning experience, the concept of sequencing then comes in. What is sequencing in pedagogy? Sequencing of content involves the what? Involves the arrangement, logical as well as sound arrangement of your materials and topic from simple to complex, from known to unknown, and from concrete to abstract. So it implies that as a teacher, when you are planning your instruction, just because you have said the learners are interacting not just with you as a teacher alone, but with the content, with the materials, and also the activities. So you are going to be arranging them. All those planned interactions should be such that it will be logical as well as pedagogically sound, from simple to complex, from known to unknown, from concrete to abstract. So when we say simple to complex, that implies that you are going to be teaching your learner, you will start from basic concepts before advancing into a very more difficult one. So as a teacher that is planning instruction and want your learner to be carried along, you will start from the basic concepts, clarify those concepts, let them understand what they mean before you then advance further and advance further. You cannot just jump to another thing whereby they need to understand the meaning of that concept. First of all, you at least ensure that they understand the basic meaning of any concept that you are dealing with before they then proceed to other things around the concept. Learners are not tabula rasas. That means they also have their own proud learning experience or their own entry behavior. So you can also connect from known to unknown. When you want to ensure that you want to build a new learning experience from them, you start with what they are familiar with. That's another concept of content sequencing. You experience that they are familiar with so so and so, given their exposure in their environment. You start from there, and from there they will be able to connect what you are teaching them to what they have already known before. And from there you start ensuring that you create more advanced knowledge around that concept, especially with respect to what you want to achieve in your behavioral objective. Similarly, you can also use real life experience, because sometimes most of the ideas that you are explaining to your learners may be abstract ideas. So you connect it to reality, use real life examples. In fact, your instructional material should be such that it is tangible enough that they can feel, see and touch. So what I'm saying in essence is that as a teacher, that you are trying to ensure that your learning experience is sequenced from concrete to abstract. Before you start teaching them something that is abstract enough, you will first of all look at around and teach them with what they can see, what they can feel and what they can touch, so that at the end of the day you'll be able to relate it to the abstract afterward, not from abstract to concrete, not from complex to simple, not from unknown to known. That would be a very bad learning experience for your learners. Another thing is what we call chronological order. You see, when you talk about content of your lesson being arranged with respect to the time sequencing, you arrange it from ascending order, or you arrange it from descending order, depending on the nature of the topic you are teaching, such that you will not be saying you want to teach A to Z and you will now be teaching A, C, W. No, you are going to be teaching it in a way that it will be arranged. Arrangement is important. And when I say arrangement is important, it implies that your arrangement should be such that learners will then be able to connect that learning experience as they unfold. They will not be confused, or you will not, because of that, confuse them further. Then there's also what we call the spiral sequencing. Spiral sequencing is usually help to do what we call increase level of complexity over time. You can always go back and forth when you teach a particular thing. In order to explain the next thing, you go back to the basics so that you can connect it back, and this will be spiral, meaning that for them to understand the next thing, they need basic knowledge, or they need to transfer knowledge from the previous explanation. So you go back a little bit, then you reconnect. Afterward, you go back a little bit, you reconnect, but that will not be chronological. That's why they call it spiral sequencing. All these principles of sequencing should be applied during your planned instruction. This will enhance their comprehension, it will enhance their retention, it will prevent what we call cognitive overload. Students will follow you. There will be a smooth progression in their learning journey. When you start from simple to complex, there will be smooth progression in their learning experience. When you start from known to unknown, when you start from concrete to abstract. Similarly, you will be able to cater for diverse type of learners. You know, in the classroom, we have various learners and we have individual differences. So you'll be able to cater for it when you sequence your content, your experience, your activity in such a manner that it will allow for simple to complex, known to unknown, concrete to abstract, in a chronological order or spiral sequence, depending on the complexity of what you are teaching. All this will enhance what we call supporting learners' ability and enhance learning experience. Let us now talk about delivery. Delivery of learning experience is such that you can use variety of methodology. But in recent time, we are now in the era where we are urged as teachers to use learner-centered approaches. It is important that learner is now at the center of your teaching and learning process. So when you want to deliver any learning experience rather, you are supposed to focus on learner-centered methodology. In the previous semester, you have been exposed to those methodologies, the ones that are teacher-centric in nature, as well as the ones that are learner-centered in nature. So as a teacher, you have to focus on ensuring that you use the learner-centered approaches, just because teacher in this age are just facilitator. They are not just the sole provider of knowledge. Why are you going to be using that? You are using that because learners should be active participants, because they are also going to interact, or that approach will allow them to interact, collaborate. Then they will also be able to use what they are learning in real life situation, just because they are also involved. And examples of such is discussion method, cooperative learning method or group learning method, problem-based learning, project-based inquiry and discovery learning. All these ones are learner-centered approaches that you can use when you are delivering your instruction. Demonstration method, practical activities, and so on and so forth. This will help to improve engagement. It will help to what? Motivate your learner to learn. It will ensure that they do what we call self-directed learning, since they are also participants. Then they will be able to direct their learning by themselves. Then they will have deeper understanding, not just ephemeral understanding. They will have deeper understanding. So in your instructional delivery, focus on using learner-centered approaches so that your learners will be engaged, motivated. They will be able to think critically, creatively, and understand what you are teaching them deeper. However, in the process of ensuring that you teach what the curriculum asks you to teach, you are to align your objective with your instructional content as well as assessment. When I say align your instructional objective with your content and assessment, this will ensure consistency and coherency. Constructive alignment is such that what is your objective is what you are teaching, and what you are teaching is also what you are assessing. So alignment refers to the consistency and the coherency among learning objectives, instructional content, teaching activities, as well as assessment method. What are we saying here? We are saying that your learning objective should also be the basis for you to have your instructional content. Your instructional content rather should be in tandem with your learning objectives. Your teaching activities should be such that it's going to be explaining your instructional content and achieving your learning objectives. Then your assessment method should be such that will be emanating from what you have taught and what you want to achieve at the end of the day. So that means your objective should guide your teaching, and your teaching and your objective should guide your assessment. This is what we call alignment of objective, content, and assessment. So during your instructional delivery, if there is no constructive alignment, you will be setting good objectives, but those objectives might not be achievable. And when they are not achievable, you will not know whether you have achieved it if your assessment methods do not tarry or is not in tandem with your instructional content. Or in fact, even if you have good instructional content, your teaching activities is such that it is not at par, it is at variance to what your objective is. That means as a teacher, you have not really ensured consistency and coherency between what the curriculum expects you to teach, what you are teaching, and what you are assessing. So this alignment, just like I have said earlier, will help us to align what we call what learners should achieve, as well as the content to use to achieve. It will also help us to align what learners want to achieve, as well as what you are going to be teaching, as well as how you evaluate those things that you have taught. More importantly, for example, if you have taught students practically, your assessment should allow them to demonstrate it practically. You have taught them how to do something practically, you should not now be assessing them theoretically or ask them to write exam. Also ask them to do it. Once they can do it, that is the end. That is an alignment between content and assessment. So if you have explained to the student theoretically, you cannot ask them to be assessed practically just because your content is theoretical and your assessment too should be theoretical. I hope that is taken care of. That will allow for what we call constructive alignment. This alignment is important in instructional delivery because it helps to promote fairness and validity in your assessment. Why? Sometimes you will, when there is a misalignment, you will be testing what you did not teach, or you will be teaching what you did not, what the curriculum does not expect you to teach, and in that case there will be a catastrophe. But if there's an alignment, there will be enhanced instructional effectiveness and instructional creativity. Learners performance will improve, outcome will improve, as well as outcome based education. Why? Because it is based on what is expected of you that you are doing, because you are doing proper alignment. As a teacher now, what is now your role in ensuring that you organize and deliver good learning experience? The first thing is to select the appropriate content. Having set the objective, thank God we have told you that objectives are supposed to be smart, meaning they are supposed to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound. So having set smart objectives, you then need to select the appropriate content that will help you teach those smart objectives. Ensure that you sequence them logically from simple to complex, from known to unknown, from what? Concrete to abstract, chronologically, as the case may be. Then once you are able to do that sequencing, you are going to be using learner-centered methods or learner-centric approaches in your teaching methodology. Just because in this era we are, learners should be actively engaged in the learning process because they are also active participants. This will ensure alignment. Ensuring alignment will allow you to be able to achieve what you have set to achieve, teaching the appropriate content and assessing it accordingly. Then you should get feedback from your assessment. Your assessment should not just be assessment of learning, it should be assessment as learning as well as assessment of learning. That means you are going to be using assessment that is formative in nature. Assessment that is formative in nature will accommodate feedback during instruction. You don't have to wait till the end of instruction. So finally, effective organization of instruction or delivery of learning experience requires thoughtful sequencing. And what do I mean by that? The thoughtful sequencing of the content, the use of learner-centered instructional approaches, the strong alignment between objective content and assessment. So as a teacher that wants to effectively organize and deliver your learning experience, you need to sequence your content, you need to use learner-centered approach, you need to align your objective with your content as well as your assessment. This will help you to teach purposively and achieve good learning outcome. So far so good. From the revision questions that you have here, I will want you to drop on the chat box the answers to any of these 5 questions. You don't have to discuss. You can just tell us what is the meaning of learning experience. You can also drop what are the principles of sequencing. What do you mean by learner-centered approach? What do you understand by the concept of alignment when you want to implement curriculum, and so on and so forth? And as a teacher, what are your rules? I will go through the answers in few minutes to show that you are following in the comment section. Thank you for listening.